Welcome to We Talk Money. I'm your host, Robert Geniak, author of the international bestseller, Rich is a State of Mind. And my guest today is Larry Hoover of Living Transition. Now, one of the things we face as an aging demographic is the fact that we have to make decisions either for our aging parents or for ourselves when we get to that age. And that is something that Larry Hoover is an expert in. Larry, how did you get started in this area?
Well, ironically, and again, thanks for having me, Robert. Several years ago in my work environment, I heard phone calls and people around me and colleagues taking some very uncomfortable conversations from family members. They would say things like, "I'm sorry, Mom, I can't leave the office now. I have a client meeting," or things of that nature. They were talking to parents who were really upset and struggling at that time. So I thought, there's got to be a better way. And then I was experiencing this myself in my own family situation as well too. I struggled to find all the information in one spot. There were little snippets of information throughout the internet, but I really struggled. So I decided I'm going to build a knowledge base of this knowledge, a single go-to spot for all the answers in terms of the whole process for long-term care.
So when we start talking about this concept of long-term care, one of the topics that comes up is retirement home or long-term care residence. Now, is there a difference between the two, and what does it mean to us?
A huge difference, and most people don't know this, and I didn't know it for most of my life as well, but the retirement community is primarily driven by for-profit organizations. So these could be companies that may own 100 or more homes across the country, or they may just be one-off mom and pop shops, and you're totally out of pocket in terms of financing for those. On the other hand, the long-term care world is managed by the Ministry of Health and Long-Term Care. It's very regulated, and this is where the most vulnerable people go to. So there's a big difference between the two worlds.
Now, aside from those two options, we always have the option to age or stay in home. And is that ideal for us?
In a perfect world, it is preferred. We would want to finish our final journey in our homes if we can. Okay. But the reality is we can't. Mom or dad may need some care. It is very expensive to do. The province offers a few hours, perhaps per week. One idea that an accountant told me about is there's equity in the homes of moms and dads. A lot of them are paid off already, so borrow against that and help to pay to bring in the help that they need.
And as somebody who really hasn't had to experience that, what is the reality of aging in home like?
It is expensive. It is expensive. There may be retrofitting outside of the home, inside the home. You may have to consider meals. Various types of caregivers have to come in who are professionals in various areas as well too. It could be a few hours a day. It could be 24/7, 7 days a week.
And so we have some funding that's available to us probably from governmental agencies. Private insurance, but as you suggested, it can be costly, and it's something that every case is individual, right?
It is, and the industry introduced long-term care insurance in the insurance industry about 15, 20 years ago. It is starting to disappear today, so one should be cognizant of creating a plan early with their financial folks to get ahead of that curve.
I think we're off to a great start on this topic, Larry. And I'd like to continue because I've got a couple more questions that we're going to do right after this short break.
A staggering 40% of all majorly injured patients in Windsor-Essex are impaired by alcohol or marijuana. When you go out, it is your responsibility to make plans for a sober ride home. Designate a sober driver, call a taxi, or use public transit. The choice is yours. Drive sober, get home safe. Or the next ride you get might not be taking you home.
Tune in after the game. Good stuff. Welcome back to We Talk Money. My guest today is Larry Hoover of Living Transition. And we spent the first half of the show talking about the concept of retirement homes, long-term care, ideally aging in home. What are the realities like? Long-term care seems like an incredibly mysterious area. And one of the things that you've done to help alleviate that for Canadians is create a guide to long-term care and what options are. How do we use that guide as Canadians to help make better decisions?
Great question, because most people have never gone through this before. We found it's like a deer in a headlight type of scenario. So 6-7 years ago, I put together a 95-page guide. It's basically a plan to the entire process. So, and any plan should be created before the need arises. So it's a complete guide to everything. Who do you talk to? What do you say? When do you say it? A variety of different things for that, for the process.
Now, you know, as I do, and I suffer from this myself, I'm a bit of a procrastinator. So while, yes, it would be nice to have the plan in place, how do we deal with it when it happens to us suddenly? And more importantly, what are, say, the top 2 questions we should be asking the moment we realize, okay, I really need to get some education here?
Within the plan, there's 16 chapters, there's a lot of detail, but I would say some of the biggest questions people ask me is, what does it cost, and who do I talk to initially to start the process?
Okay. And in terms of that, who do we talk to initially? My guess is it's not a self-help, you can do this all on your own. We should be seeking help from others in that space to help us answer the questions and to alleviate some of the anxiety, correct?
That is correct, but unfortunately there's not many people involved in the process, because the CCAC organizations, which are governed by the Ministry of Health and Long-Term Care in Toronto, they are the keepers of the long-term care beds and the process and so on. So that is your first point of contact. Okay. They're in a bit of a transition right now, so but they are there to help.
And my understanding is there are different layers, and each of those layers has different roles and different points of contact. So how do we begin to tackle this?
Initially, it's the calling your local CCAC/LIN organization, and they will more often than not send a registered nurse or an RPN to your home and start assessing the senior, and they'll have their series of questions.
So Larry, for our viewers who have never heard the term CCAC or LIN before, what does that mean?
Community Care Access Centers and Local Health Integrated Network.
And do we find one in every community around Ontario or around Canada?
Generally speaking, yes. I believe there are 15 or 17 located throughout the province, so they're easy to find.
So with all of these different roles, different points of contact, different levels of care, different levels of funding, what's the solution to helping Canadians make better decisions about what to do for an aging parent?
Start as early as possible, because the cost for a long-term care bed could be anywhere from $22,000 to $31,000 a year. So one has to understand where that funding is coming from. So get educated, get information, talk to your local doctor as well too, and understand what may be ahead of you in the journey.
And one last question from a tax perspective, because we're just coming off tax season now. Yes. Are there tax credits that we can apply for? How do we deal with that at the same time as we're dealing with all of these other issues?
Right, and I'm not a financial expert, but the most obvious one is that you do receive a tax credit for the monthly fee and the monthly stay at the homes as well, so that's significant.
My guest today has been Larry Hoover, and Larry, I want to thank you very much for being on the show today and for helping educate Canadians about the topic of long-term care. If you'd like more information about Larry and the services that he provides, check the screen. All of his contact information is there. This has been another episode of We Talk Money. If you'd like to check out past episodes, you can find them at we-tv.ca. And until next time, thank you for watching.